Hi, everybody. Welcome in, all of my friends. I hope you're having a good Tuesday. It's so good to see everybody. I am looking forward to today's project too, and I hope that you are as well. We're going to let everybody make their way on in first before we get into all of that, though, because I don't want anybody to miss anything. Hello to my YouTube family. Hi, Mary. Hi, Pat. Hi, Lindy. Bonnie's here. Nicole is here. Hi, Sharon. How are you? Hope you're having a good one. Facebook is making their way in as well. Oh, goodness. How is everybody feeling? Are you guys doing okay? Hey, Susie. I hope y'all are feeling okay. I am, I'm feeling a bit better, but I'm having some lingering symptoms, which is just not quite fun. So, yeah. If anybody else knows that feeling, it kind of feels like, let's see. It's just myalgia, honestly. You know, where your body just aches from head to toe, your joints ache, your muscles ache, and you're just incredibly tired. That's how I feel. And I am so ready for it to go away because I have so much stuff I need to do. I can finally breathe, like without sounding like I'm talking through a paper towel tube. And that's wonderful. But this leftover stuff that is just hanging around is awful. So anybody else that's out there that is not feeling good, I'm there with you. We are in this together. I hope the rest of you though are staying well, washing your hands, not touching anybody. Don't touch anybody. Keep your hands to yourself, people. I'll be all right though. I just wanted to update you because it never fails somebody asks. So before anybody asks, I can breathe and I feel better, but I also don't feel better at all. So hope that answers your question. But I'm here, and that's the most important part. We're here. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna have a good time. Listen, I've got a fun project for you guys today. That was actually a request on Instagram. So I like to keep up with things that people ask for, and sometimes I miss those opportunities. I try to keep a running list, but I'm really bad about it. Fortunately, my team is really good about keeping me in line. So this was a request over on Instagram, and I hope that whoever requested this one is watching today, and if they don't, hopefully they'll see this on the replay. So the project that we're doing today is a macrame style project. It's really easy, particularly if you know how to do square knots, but it is a project that I think is perfect for this time of year because depending on the materials that you use to put this project together, this can be a really cool unisex project. Why does that matter? It matters because this time of year, it is so hard to do men's jewelry. Does anybody else out there have that problem? Like, I struggle to come up with ideas for men's jewelry because I feel like their jewelry is very simplistic, but I don't want to give them the same thing over and over and over again. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do, just like large hole beads on leather every single year. That seems like a little, so hopefully this will help to change this up a little bit. Now, the materials that I'm showing you today might not necessarily be unisex. However, remember that everything that I do in today's project could be done with something else. So where I'm going to be using some S-Lon, you could be using hemp. I'm actually going to show you a hemp example. You could use hemp, you could use leather, you could use anything. And I think that you would get some really cool results. I think that the biggest factor in this being a unisex project is probably going to be your bead choices, because I picked sparkly beads because that's, I love sparkly beads. However, if you were to do this project with some gemstone beads or just like some really awesome wooden beads or hematite beads, I think you would be able, or metal beads, any metal beads, I think you would be able to get a really cool look for this that a guy would be happy to wear, and it's not crazy sparkly. You know what I mean? So, all right. So I'm going to get you guys turned around. I have two ways to put this together. One of them I've already done, and I'm just going to use that as the example. The other one, I'm going to do hopefully all of it. We'll see how this goes though. So it's kind of a repetitive project. So I hope you guys don't get super bored with this, but all right, I'm going to turn you around. Here we go. All right. Marianne said she picked out some nice tiger's eye for her husband. I love that. Tiger's eye is so pretty and it works for everybody. I love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Clean off my bead mat here. I had a cat that was napping in here earlier. And she always leaves her fur behind and it never fails. I pick it up as we are doing the project. Okay. So let me show you the one that I have already done. Now I did this one with those like mermaidy beads, you know, the ones, these were actually in the November bargain bead box and they have that beautiful kind of glow to them. And I did this with hemp, but I also did this on bead stringing wire, which is a little bit different than what we are going to do today. So I wanted to show you that you can do this 2 different ways. And I'm also going to show you how I finished this one off in comparison to the one that we're going to do together. So this is hemp in blue on beading wire and regular whole beads. So I didn't use large whole beads because I used bead stringing wire. That's the advantage of using the bead stringing wire for your core, because then it doesn't matter if your beads are large whole or not, right? It absolutely makes no difference. So that's really cool. Plus, when you are finished with this, you can put on your hardware. You can do a crimp and a wire guardian and all of that stuff. So you can have hardware attached to this instead of like an adjustable macrame clasp. So there's just a lot of options is kind of what I'm getting at, but this is what we are going to be creating, but we're going to be doing this with some different materials. Okay. And I will show you how to finish this one off too. All right. So what I'm going to be using is I'm using some S-Lon and I'm going to be using the S-Lon as my core, as well as what I am going to be knotting with. So to get started, what I want is a piece of this that is about 13 inches long. I want to be sure that I have plenty of this when it is time to make my adjustable clasp. So be sure that you give yourself plenty of this. Okay. And then I'm going to use some more of the beads from the bargain bead box. I'm going to use some of these green beryl beads because I'm absolutely obsessed with them. They're so pretty. And I thought they looked really nice with this green, this like sagey green colored S-Lon. Kind of different, right? Kind of different. All right. I'm also going to be using my tying station. However, you do not have to use your tying station. You can put this on a macrame board. You can tape this down to your work surface with some painter's tape. You can, let's see, what else? I don't know, you use a clipboard, whatever works for you. You don't have to have a tying station. However, if you're looking for a last minute Christmas gift, if somebody's asking you and you don't have a tying station, I highly recommend them because it's just so much fun and easy to work with. So I'm going to take my core and I'm going to go ahead and attach the top of it just by sliding it between these 2 plates up here on the top, and leaving myself a little bit of a tail. And then I'm just going to tighten that down. All right. Now I'm going to preload my core with some beads. I don't really know how many beads I'm going to need for this, but I'm going to put on about 7. That one has a mark on it. I'm going to put about 7 beads on this and we'll just see. We might need more. We might need less. We don't really know. That's the joy of doing this together. We're going to find out together. Now, you're also going to need 3 more additional pieces of the S-Lon, and you're going to need those pieces to be about 3.5 to 4 feet long. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to be essentially folding those in half. Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you so much. I'm just glad you're here, Cecilia. I appreciate you. All right, so I've added my beads. All right, so these are ready to go. So all I have to do is just slide them up when I'm ready for them. And then down here on the other end, I'm going to slide that bottom underneath the 2 plates down here. So I'm going to take everything off. I'm just going to slide it on and tighten it up. All right, now, like I said, 3 cords, unless you want to do more. I used 3. Now the hemp is a little bit bigger than the S-Lon. It's a little thicker. So this makes kind of a thicker knot. My S-Lon knots are going to be a bit smaller. Excuse me. But if you want more knots, you're going to need to have more than 3 pieces of your S-Lon. But if you're using something like this, you don't need nearly as much, unless you just want it to look that way, right? Okay. So now taking our S-Lon, and as I mentioned, you need about 4-foot pieces, and you're going to need about 3 of those, unless you want more. Oh gosh. And I should have pre-cut these, but I didn't because the cat, as I mentioned, was in here, and this is one of her favorite things. So if I had pre-cut this and she came in here before I did, I would never have found it anyways. So probably would have found it in a chewed up, wet cat slobbery wad somewhere. So that's why I'm cutting it with you guys. All right. So now we are ready to get started. So I have my 3 pieces here. I'm going to start with 1 piece. Okay, so I'm going to take 1 piece out of the 3, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to go underneath the core. And then I'm going to bring my ends together to find the middle. Thank you, Ashley. Love you back. Hola from Puerto Rico. All right, so now square knots. I know a lot of you are familiar with square knots, but if you are not, this is going to be the time to get familiar with them, because that's all this project is. Okay. So I'm going to try to break this down for you as best as I can. I'm going to go slow. You're going to get to see the knots a lot. So hopefully at some point you'll have an aha moment if you haven't already figured out the square knots. Square knots happen in 2 steps. Everything you do on the right, you're also going to do on the left. There are people in this world that start on the left, and that's fine, but I always start on the right. That just makes the most sense to me. So that's the way I teach this. Okay. So starting on the right, notice I'm holding this with my finger because this isn't secure just yet. We have to tie that first initial knot to get this secure. I'm going to take my right-handed cord and I'm going to make a P shape with that cord. And I'm not making a big P shape. I'm making a small P shape. This cord P shape on the right is going over the top of the core. Okay. Then I'm going to take the left cord, cross it over the right-handed cord that is now running this direction. And I'm going to go behind the core and up through the P shape that I made. And then I'm going to pull. That's step 1. See if I can get that up close for you to see. It doesn't look like much at the moment. Okay. Now I'm going to repeat that for the second half of this knot, but I'm going to start on the left this time. Okay. So I'm just mirroring what I did on the right. So I'm going to take the left cord and I'm going to make my backwards P shape on this side, run that cord out that direction, take the right cord. We're going to cross over that cord, and then we're going behind the core and up through that backwards P shape on the left side, and we're going to pull. And when we pull, that's the second half of our knot, and that completes a square knot. Now, with the S-Lon, I know that's very small. It's a little bit difficult to see. That's why I wanted to be sure that I had this in something larger so that you could see it with a bigger cord. So you can see each one of these knots, a knot being this right here, that is the 2 steps of the square knot. And you can see there's 3, 1, 2, and 3. And how do I know that? Because I'm counting the bumps. 1, 2, 3. That means there is a total of 3 knots here. If there is 1, 2, and it looks like a knot, but there's no bump, that means I only did 1/2 of this and I need to finish it off with the second half. Okay, we'll talk about that some more as we go, but I just want you to be able to see this in a larger form. Okay, so I have secured cord number 1. Now I'm going to slide this up to the top, all the way up here, right up next to the acrylic plate. And I'm going to leave it. And I'm going to take a second cord and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So cord number 2, this is a completely separate cord than the one we just had. Going underneath the core, bring my 2 ends together, pull to find the middle. And then I'm going to repeat the exact same process to anchor this cord to our core. So P shape on the right, Left-handed cord crosses over that, goes behind and up through the P shape on the right and pull. And then we need to repeat that on the left. Backwards P shape, crosses over the core. Right cord crosses over that, goes behind the core and up through our backwards P shape on the left and pull. That is a full knot. And now we are going to slide that knot up here right next to the one we just created. Okay. We're going to do one more. Taking our third cord underneath, bring the two ends together. Find the middle. And then same steps, P shape on the right, left cord crosses over, oops, goes behind and up through, pull, left side, backwards P shape, right cord crosses, whoops, right cord crosses over that, goes up through that backwards P shape and pull. All right, slide that up. Okay, so now what we have is we have 3 cords on either side. Okay. Yes, Kathy says this is so much like the herringbone bracelet that we did on Hardwired recently, but with thread instead of wire. Exactly. And I actually have that bracelet here. I'm going to show that as a little example, not only of what we do in Hardwired, but to show that you are exactly right. All right, so now we are going to slide up a bead. And we want that bead to sit right up against the last knot that we made. Okay. Now, it's really important as you're doing this to keep yourself from getting really confused and causing problems. That's why I love my tying station. Do not get me wrong, but I also really love a self-healing macrame board because I can use T-pins to hold these all down as I'm working so that they don't get all mixed up and crazy. I can't really do that here with a tying station. So if you're doing this without a macrame board and you're doing it on your tying station or anything else, you want to be really careful that you don't mix up the order of your threads. So I'm always kind of pulling them out and making sure that I'm using the correct ones. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take, remember that very first cord that we attached. That's the one up here at the top. We're going to take both sides of that top cord. Okay. And again, making sure that all these other ones are staying out of the way. We're going to take the top cord and we're going to do a square knot. So we're going to right side P shape. Left cord crosses over that, goes behind and up through. And when you pull, it's going to create a little frame around your bead. However, if you are using S-Lon, it is kind of slippery. So this knot may come undone before you get that second half of the knot. So just be patient with this because this S-Lon, it is really slippery. All right, now we have to do the second half of this knot or it's not going to stay. So left-handed side, so we're doing our backwards P across the core, taking our right cord crossing over that, goes behind, oops, and up through. And you can see how my knot has come loose. Before I tighten down the second step of that, I'm going to retighten and then pull up that second half. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's good. It's locked in. It's not going anywhere. Bead's not going anywhere. Everything is great. Okay. Now we are going to move on to the next cord. The next cord is the next one down. So where we started with the top cord, the second cord down, that's this one, which is now the top cord. We're going to bring it down and we are going to do the same thing, making sure though that our other cords are staying out of the way. Okay. So same steps, right P shape, left cord crosses over, goes behind and up through. and pull. Now, what you want to know, or what you want to be sure about, is that this cord sits behind the previous cord. And I'm going to show you that up close here in just a second, but we're going to go ahead and set this knot in place with the second half. So backwards P shape on the left, crossing over, going behind and up through. Again, before I pull, I want to be sure everything is sitting exactly where it's supposed to be sitting, and then pull. All right, so let me show you this from the side. See how the second cord that we brought in to knot is behind the first one? We want that on both sides. This one is not. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our beading awl, and we are very gently going to come in and just kind of push it into the place where it belongs. You're going to see that. Oh, wait, no, that was right, wasn't it? Oh, no, there. You're going to see it's a little harder on one side than it is on the other. And honestly, it doesn't matter that much. But as a general rule, you want the cord that you're working with to go behind the previous cord. It just makes it look nice. Okay. All right. So now we are going to our top cord again. It's always the top cord that you're going to knot with. So the top cord is kind of far away from the other two, but that's okay. Bringing it down. And we're going to do the same things. P shape on the right, left cord crosses over, goes behind and up through, and pull. Make sure it's behind. See that? Okay. Left side, so we're doing our backwards P shape. Right cord crosses over, goes behind and up through. Make sure your knots are tight and pull. And there you go. And basically what we're going to do is we're just going to repeat this process the entire time. If you mess it up, it's totally fine. Honestly, as long as you get your 3 knots in there and your cords are kind of fighting with each other and getting all wonky, it's going to be fine. It's going to be just fine. All right, so now we're back to our 3 cords being all close together. So we're ready to slide up a bead, sliding up the next bead. And we're going to start this process all over again. So we are starting with our very top cord, bringing the top cord to us, making sure that the other 2 cords are out of the way. And we're doing our P shape. Left cord crosses over, behind and up through, and pull. Left side, backwards P shape. Right cord crosses over, behind and up through. All right. Moving to the next top cord. Bringing that top cord to us. Keeping the other cords out of the way. P shape on the right. Left side. Behind and up through. And pull. Left side, backwards P shape. Right cord goes behind and up through. Pull. And getting our top cord again. Bringing that to us. I love that you guys are loving this one. Listen, it takes a little bit of patience, but I feel like the results are so pretty. So if you're not in a hurry, because this is definitely not an instant gratification piece, this is going to take a little bit of time. Is it going to take forever? No, but would it take maybe an hour or 2 if you're not super comfortable with macrame? Yeah, it might. It might. Even if you are super comfortable with macrame, this is still a time-consuming project, but I feel like the results are so pretty. And this is where this kind of fishbone look comes in. Now, let me show you what we did in hardwired, because what we did in hardwired looks almost exactly like this, but we did it with wire. So just to give you an example of what else is possible. So this is basically the same thing, just with wire. Now, the steps are different, obviously, because you treat wire way differently than you would treat your cord. So this is not actually a knotting technique. This involves knots. This does not. This involves wire wrapping. But essentially, it is the exact same thing, which is really cool. All right, ready to slide up another bead. Pull my cords out, separate those out, get my top cords. Okay, bringing my top cords to me. You can do your cords in all different colors to make a really cool like rainbow effect. You can also add beads to your cords that you're knotting with. So there are so many different variations that you can do with just this technique. So many different things. You can really come up with some cool designs. If you wanted to fill up both sides of this with little seed beads or crystals. If you're going to use crystals, I definitely recommend using really small ones, probably 3 millimeter or less. That's why I think seed beads would probably be the best bet. But you can get some really cool looks by adding beads to these outer cords. All right, so I'm just following the same steps. The trick to this is making sure that just like with any square knots, that you do both sides, right? You do the right side and then the left side. Don't do the right side and then forget the left side and just move on to the next cord, because it's not going to look good. What's going to end up happening is your bracelet is not going to lay flat. It's going to have this weird kind of spiral to it, which is great if that's what you're going for, but we're definitely not going for that with this. Tina says, so since the cord is so thin, are the beads too heavy? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I feel like it's a good balance. I feel like if you feel like there needs to be more of the cord showing, you should probably do more than 3 cords. 5 cords is going to give you a much thicker section of knots, and that might be a little bit more visually balanced. But I think it looks good. I don't find that these beads are too heavy. They're pretty lightweight beads anyways. And visually, I think it works out pretty good. Colleen says she makes a lot of macrame bracelets using 1 millimeter leather. Me too. And leather is the perfect material to use for unisex bracelets. Because who doesn't love leather? Everybody likes leather. It looks good on everybody. And it's so sturdy. So I feel like if the man in your life is hard on jewelry, leather lasts a really long time. Hemp is also the same way. But I feel like the leather really stands up to everyday wear. Hi, Katie. All right. So we're just moving on. Kim says, and leather smells yummy. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Bonus for smelling good. So gift idea wise, changing up the beads, right? Changing up the cords. You could use lava beads for this, and you could put in like a little bottle of essential oils to go with it, because your lava beads can take those essential oils. And I think that would be a really, really nice gift, even for a man. Like some essential oils. I know, like if there's a man in your life that suffers from migraines, peppermint oil is so soothing. So, maybe including a little bit of peppermint oil that they can dab onto their beads really takes this to a super personal level. I really like that. But honestly, the sky is the limit with this kind of project. And you can add other beads to this. Oops, I needed to add a bead, speaking of. You can add other beads to this in this section. So if you wanted to do this, and instead of having 1 bead, you had 3, and you were like doing the knotting around 3 beads, you can do that as well. So I love how versatile macrame is. It's one of my very favorite things. It's how I got started in jewelry making, was macrame. So I'm always very, very passionate when it comes to creating these kinds of projects, because that's what really intrigued me as a teenager and got me hooked, was the versatility. Because once you learn a couple of basic knots, you can do so many different things just by changing the cording or adding beads to certain cords. It really makes a huge difference. If books were still a thing, everybody gets everything online nowadays. If jewelry making books were still a thing, I would do a macrame book for sure. I think that would probably, a macrame book and a wire book would be the two books that I would write. Yes, let me do this one last knot right here and I'll show you the side view again. Not a problem. Oh, I really feel rotten. I feel like maybe I need to go to the doctor. I don't know what's wrong. It does not feel good. All right, that's the side view. So you can see trying to keep these cords, the top cord, the middle cord, and the last cord. So every time I make a knot, the next cord that I use needs to try to be behind the previous one. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, but it looks really good. And you can see, like, the cord kind of has a mind of its own. So you can see where this one is kind of hidden back behind. I'm not that super worried about it. I try to make it look like that, but if it doesn't end up looking like that, that's fine. And you're going to find that the different kinds of cords that you use are going to behave differently. So the S-Lon is notoriously slippery. So the knots don't stay. That first knot, you always kind of have to tighten it up before you set the second knot for your square knot. And because it's slippery, it slips and slides up against itself. So they may not always stay in line. Leather is much better at staying where you put it, and hemp is as well. Cotton cord can also be a little slippery. Wax cord is going to stay 100% wherever you put it. So just know that everything is going to behave a little bit differently. So you may find that it's a little bit more challenging depending on what your materials are. All right. One Bless says, I still prefer actual books. I enjoy the sound of the pages turning and the smell of the paper. Gosh, you and me both. And I can tell that you're a reader just by the most eloquent way you said that. I am giving you a hug. You are my people. Yes, me too. All right, sliding up another bead. And you can see so far we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is our 6th bead. We added 7. That's not going to be nearly enough. We're right at halfway. So we're probably going to need more beads to finish this off. I'm probably not going to be able to finish the entire bracelet because I do want to be sure that I can show you how to finish this, but we'll go as far as we can. Okay. So top cord again. All right. I love that so many of you still use books. I wish that it were lucrative enough. You know what I mean? Because I know that there are still those of us out here that love books, but when it comes to the craft and hobby industry, most publishers say no because they don't make enough money from them, because you can get all of the techniques and all of the projects readily available online. And I get it. That's why I'm in the business that I'm in. That's why I do these Facebook Lives. If Facebook Live didn't work, I'd be writing books. You know what I mean? So I get it. I get it. Kim, why are you annoyed? Don't be annoyed. We're here to hug you. What are you annoyed about? No. Somebody hug Kim. You keep all your beading and metalsmith notes in notebooks. I do too. I have a ton of notebooks that sit here that I grab for on a regular basis. I do too. Nancy says she grabs them from the thrift store when she sees them in the book section. I do too. We have a McKay's. Well, not here, but in town. I have to drive to get there. But we have a McKay's, and I always go to the jewelry making and crafting sections and grab the books that are there, because one of these days they're going to be next to impossible to find. I have a really nice collection of jewelry making books, but all right, sliding up. Next one. All right, so we're starting from the top again. Now, I know I've kind of gotten away from walking you through this, but we've done a bunch of these. So let's go again with the walking through in case somebody is just now joining us. We're doing square knots, and we're using 3 different cords to do that, to get this really cool kind of fishbone look. So we are going to use our top cord out of the 3, P shape on the right. That right cord crosses over the core. Left cord crosses over that, goes behind and up through that P shape, and then pull. Okay. Backwards P shape on the left. Right cord crosses over that, goes behind and up through our backwards P shape. And with the S-Lon, that first step of the knot gets a little loose, so I pull on it and then pull up the second half. All right. Next step, top cord, pulling that down, P shape on the right, left cord, behind and up through. And again, just kind of making sure to kind of guide that cord where I want it to go. Left side, our backwards P shape, right cord goes behind and up through. And pull. All right. Top cord, making sure the other cords stay out of the way. Marianne says, the 3 cords, how long were they and how do you determine the measurement? So this is a really good question, and I wish that I had a great answer for you, but I don't, unfortunately. So macrame is one of those things where it always takes more cord than you think that you actually need, and there's nothing worse than getting into a project and running out of cord, because unlike with other projects, you can't add more cord to it, not in a way that is not noticeable. There are tips and tricks for that, but I have never found one that I think looks seamless. So the best way to do this is to overestimate. So the core cord that I'm using here is about 12 to 13 inches long. That is because if you're going for like a 7.5-inch bracelet, we still need some extra inches on the ends to make an adjustable clasp, which we're going to do here in just a second. For the knotting cords, what you have to remember is that whatever the measurement is, it's actually only half of that, because we knotted our knotting cords in the center. So if I have a 4-foot piece of cord, which is what these cords started out as, they were 4 feet long. When I knot them at the center, that means that I've only got a little under 2 inches of cord on the left and the right. Right. So even though 4 feet sounds like a lot, it's really not. It means there's 2 feet, 48 inches on both sides. I honestly just do trial and error. A good rule of thumb is to start with a wingspan. A wingspan is normally 3 to 4 feet, depending on how tall you are, right? Because your tallness and your arm span is pretty much the same. That did not come out the way that I meant it to. Please don't come at me. So I'm not saying I'm 3 feet tall. That's, you know what I mean. I really, when I do these projects, I just trial and error and then give you the measurements that I use and hope for the best, and tell you that if you need a longer bracelet, then you need more cord. There is really no mathematical equation. And the reason is because all of the cords are different. Everybody's going to use something different. Some of you may use S-Lon and this is going to be enough cord. Some of you are going to use 1mm leather and you're going to need a lot more cord, right? You're going to need more like 5 feet of each one, just because it's bigger. It takes up more room. that whole thing. So you have to take all of those things into consideration. There's no good way to measure. And I wish that there was, because I get asked that question all the stinking time. Right. And Kim says with whatever's left over, you can make tassels, which is a really good idea. So I keep all my scraps. I have scrap leather, scrap cord. I keep all of those things because you just never know. So whatever you think you're going to need, add more to it. And I wish I had a better answer, but I just don't. Okay, so we're going to pretend like we're done, even though we're only at 4.5 inches here for our bracelet. This is obviously not as long as we need our bracelet to be, but we're going to pretend like it is. So we're going to take this off of the tying station, and we are going to trim our knotting cords down a little bit. Now we're going to cut them off even more, but for the moment, I'm just trimming them to be about 1 inch, 2 inches, something like that. And I have all this leftover cord because we didn't finish our bracelet, which I can save for other things. Okay. So with S-Lon, it melts. Not everything melts. So that's why it's really important that I show you this 2 different ways, because hemp does not melt. So you have to handle your ends a little bit differently. Okay. So because the S-Lon melts, I'm going to turn this over to the back. And I am going to trim my cords really, really short. And then I'm going to melt them. You can use a thread burner. You can use a lighter. Everybody gets really nervous when I do this because I have been known to set projects on fire. But I'm going to use a lighter, and I'm just going to get that heat close. You don't want to set it on fire. You just want to get it close until it melts, and then tap it down with your finger. And you want to do each one. Thread burner is much easier. However, I have a really bad relationship with thread burners. And you can see when you turn this over, you don't really see it. You do see that little melted tip right there, but all right, I'm going to do the other one. I'm glad, Marianne. I really wish that there was like some equation, because it would make everybody's life so much easier if I could be like, well, you're going to make a 7.5 inch bracelet. It needs to be 5 feet of cord every single time. But it just doesn't work out that way, which can be frustrating because people ask that question all the time. And I feel awful that I don't really have a good answer. So, all right, I melted all of those at the same time. Okay, so now what I have is, it looks pretty seamless, right? And what I like to do if I'm using cord instead of bead stringing wire is I like to make my clasp adjustable. So what I do is I take my 2 ends. This is why the extra inches at the end of your bracelet are pretty important. I'm going to take my ends and crisscross those over each other out here to the side. And then I'm going to make square knots, a little section of square knots, just like what we've been doing. I can even use a piece of my scrap. I'm going to take a piece underneath those 2 and then do my square knots. And this is going to create an adjustable bracelet. Now, there are obviously a couple of things you got to do to this to make sure that it all stays together. First knot is always the trickiest. That did not go as planned. You can also use your tying station here if you need to. Okay, let's try this again. It's difficult because one of my cords is shorter than the other. So, all right, P shape on the right, left cord crosses over very carefully behind and up through. Once I get this first, there we go. Okay, whew, hold my breath for that. All right, then you're gonna do the left side of this. So backwards P shape, right cord goes behind and up through. If you can attach this to your tying station or your work surface, it's really helpful. Okay, so doing like 10 of these or however many of these you want is going to create a slide for adjustability. So the key to this is to not tie your knot so tight that your cords on the inside won't move. So you got to be kind of careful about that. So you want your knots to be tight, but you don't want to like pull on them extra. Otherwise, the adjustability is gone. Now, keep in mind the length of this section is going to kind of help you to know how long your bracelet is going to adjust to on the short side. So in other words, if you've done 5 inches of beads and you do an inch of your your square knots for your clasp, then you've got on the smallest side a bracelet that is 6 inches long. The length for the adjustability to make it wider depends on the length of the cord that you have to pull on. So if you have 3 inches of pull on either side, that's going to add an extra 3 inches to your bracelet, right? Actually, that ends up giving you an extra 6 inches. What do I mean by all that? Let me show you. So once you do as many of these as you want, now I normally would do a bigger section, but we're gonna move on. I'm gonna go ahead and same thing. I'm gonna melt my ends on this. Tap that down. Same thing over here on this side. Tap that down. Okay, so I didn't do a very big section, but I still have my 2 cords here to pull. See how that it's going to pull? That's how long the bracelet is. It's our baby size bracelet here. That's how short the bracelet can be. Then if I have 2 cords on either side, my pull cords, the additional length of those is how big you can make this bracelet, right? So I can make this bracelet pretty big. So all of those things need to be taken into account, right? Another thing that you need to be sure of is that you've got to do something to your ends, because if you don't and somebody pulls this all the way open, your ends will slip through. So you can add a bead to them, or you can just tie an overhanded knot. The knot is enough to keep this from sliding into this section right here. So I just tie an overhanded knot. Trim that off. I know that's going to work as a stopper, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Try to get it the same, keep my knot in the same general area, same kind of length here. Right. And that one's going to work as a stopper on this side. Now, I can only adjust up to the knot. So that's not going to slip inside. I don't have to worry that somebody's going to break their bracelet. And then I can shorten it down as small as they need it to be, right? So that is really awesome when you don't know for sure what size you need. However, if you do know what size you need and you've not used S-Lon like this that will melt, you're going to have to make knots and then add glue. So this was where I finished. First of all, the core to this is bead stringing wire. I thread all my beads onto the bead stringing wire. And then for my knotting material, I use blue hemp. And this is where I finished. I turned this over to the back and I took each one of my sets of cords and I tied an overhanded knot and I pulled that down to the surface. And then you can see where it's shiny. That's where I added glue. So I added glue to each one of those knots because this won't melt. So glue is the only thing I have to rely on to keep all of this safe. Then you can come in and trim, obviously not until your glue is dry, but you're going to trim off the excess where you would melt it if you were the S-Lon. And then for this kind of bracelet, because it is on beading wire, that's obviously the back. You can add some extra glue to that if you need to, but now you just thread on a crimp by your Guardian you treat it just like you would any other stringing project. So instead of making it adjustable, you add regular hardware to it, right? So there you go. Now, here's where it becomes a challenge. Okay. This is where things get a little tricky. The challenge that you are going to face with your leather is that you don't have a whole lot of options. Because depending on how, right, this hemp is pretty thick. I'd say it's about a 1 millimeter. So 1 millimeter leather is fine for tying your overhanded knots and adding glue. Anything bigger than 1 millimeter for leather, you are going to have big, bulky, nasty knots that are going to sit right up against your wrist. So I do not recommend using leather on anything other than leather, or in a not necessarily. I wouldn't put the leather on the bead string wire. I would put the leather on something where you can make the clasp adjustable, just so you don't have big, bulky, nasty. Now, you're still going to kind of have to figure out, like, how are you going to make this look okay? But for leather, instead of having a singular cord, you're going to take all 3 of those cords. And where we crisscross, pretending this is leather, where we crisscross, we're crisscrossing not just the core, but we're crisscrossing all of our knotting cords as well. So when you do your square knots over this, you're going to have 3 cords on this side and 3 cords on this side instead of single cords. Does that make sense? That's going to keep you from having these huge, chunky, nasty, nasty knots that are going to be really uncomfortable. And you're going to be like, why did I do that? I just ruined the entire bracelet. So yeah. Kim says, could you slide it through an end cap? You could. You could. If you wanted to slide it through an end cap, you could. And there's no reason why you can't do things like that and add glue and things like that to make the ends clean. But I know a lot of us get really excited about a project and then we rush and we put it all together. And then you get to the end and it's different than what we did here. And you're like, okay, but what happens now? And I want to try to be there for you as much as I possibly can. But there are still some major challenges when you're using thicker beading wire, or not beading wire, but thicker materials, because like, what are you going to do with all that? Right. So bead caps are a good option. Gluing things in is a good option. Just trying to avoid a big knot that's going to lay up against the skin. So could you cut the wire and then make the hemp leather adjustable? I don't know that it would stay unless you put a crimp. If you put a crimp here on the end just to keep those knots from sliding off of your bead string wire, I think you could probably do that. I think that is that was a great question, because I think that is, that's something I've never thought about before. So awesome. Yeah. I think if you put a crimp on that, you're good to go. You can trim that cord off and just use the ends. I don't know what this is, but Susie says, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm going to have my grandson watch this, then pick out some beads. Yay! Oh, that makes me so happy. That's definitely what I want, guys. And listen, just a reminder, this was a requested project, and I love being able to give you guys the things that you want. So when you have project requests, please don't hesitate. Reach out on Facebook, reach out on Instagram, just wherever you happen to be. Somebody will see it. I'll put it on the list. This one was really timely because men's jewelry is kind of hard this time of year. So if you're looking for some unisex designs, this is a great place to start. And I hope that I have done a good job teaching it to you. So got any questions? Just let me know. I love you guys so much, and I appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Hardwired will be getting together at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Looking forward to that. We're putting together a really cool pair of earrings. This is a little different. Just it's different, but it's not. So we're doing some wire weaving today. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. The rest of you guys have an amazing rest of your week. I'll see you on Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern for our Feel Good Friday show. Looking forward to it. I love you guys. Bye.